Give it a second here. All right, everybody, welcome. Another live stream here. Happy to be with former Lithuanian politician Remigijus Šimašius. Remigijus, former parliamentarian, justice minister, and mayor of Vilnius, capital Lithuania. Thank you for joining me. It's just crazy news every moment of the day, it seems, for Eastern Europeans and Ukrainians. But yeah, a lot to talk about today. So thanks for coming and talking to me here.
Yeah, thank you much for inviting. Honored to be here.
Yeah, it's my Baltic journey coming from America has been long. I first came here in 2006, and I think it was something around even 2009. I reached out to you. You were actually the first Lithuanian that I met coming down to Lithuania, and you were the justice minister at the time, and hosted me for a nice little meeting and introduced me to some of your colleagues at the Free Market Institute, who I'm still friends with today. So I really, really appreciated that. But, you know, without that out of the way, what are you up to these days? I know you're semi-retired from politics. You were just in Poland. Obviously, there's a lot going on in Ukraine.
Poland is in neighborhood, so it is quite often. But yeah, doing many things now, but in private business, mainly consultancy, and in a very fashionable area, which is actually making government leaner and working more efficient and reducing bureaucratic burden. But again, how to do it? Many approaches. I'm following Dodge, what they're doing in this. I do admire some things and do completely disagree with some. And but again, that's what they do mostly. But also trying to help Ukraine, doing some geopolitical stuff. Also at some other institutes, some policy institute. But mainly I'm earning for my bread and butter by consulting how to reduce regulatory burden, basically for public clients outside Lithuania, because my political exposure is still quite close. I mean, it's no this kind of formal limitations, but I don't want to mess it up, and I don't want to have this perception of conflict of interest. So I'm trying to stay away, and in Lithuania working just with private clients, but elsewhere with public as well.
Yeah. And you and I both share, I think, pretty strong classical liberal views, libertarian views, and haven't chatted a little bit throughout the years about a lot of that stuff, and I do want to talk about some of that today in the context of what's happening in Ukraine. But maybe before we get to that, I'd be curious just to hear your sort of framing of the situation. Like I said in the intro, we have the landscape is changing every day, obviously with the context of what's happening in the United States. One way we could talk about the United States is they're just willingly retracting themselves from a global order that they established themselves, 80 years ago. It seems to be that way. Of course, one could argue how far that is actually going. NATO is obviously a big part of that. Some people speculate perhaps they will withdraw from NATO. And then we have all the other economic things. And obviously there's too much to talk about. But I think for the context of this situation, I just was curious how you see Europe responding, because obviously it is true when Trump goes on saying that the Europeans need to spend more on their defense, the Europeans need to do more for their defense. And of course, Ukraine is in Europe. So it makes sense that when we're talking about a strong defense for Europe, Europeans should be helping them as much as they can. The Baltics, we obviously know this, the Baltics know this story very well, and they have been preparing for decades for something like this, but still we're very small. Ukraine, one could say, has perhaps not been preparing for such a, certainly in the last 10 years, things have changed. But this was kind of a step-by-step thing, and then a lot of Ukrainians were surprised 3 years ago when the full-scale invasion happened. So my point is, it's a very chaotic time for a strong democratic partner like the United States to perhaps back away, but it seems like that's what's happening. So just in the big picture, how do you feel about that situation?
Yeah, of course, it's all dangerous and all. I mean, it's. I mean, very few good words to describe the situation. Uh, Basically, when we were speaking about that, we were like preparing in the Baltics and Ukraine maybe for 10 years. I would not completely agree to that. We were a little bit preparing, but still, our defense expenditure was not big enough. We were like we were on one hand more vulnerable to Russian propaganda. On the other hand, we better recognized what it's all about. So we were like experts to tell others what this actually means when Putin and Kremlin is speaking. So we were recognized as experts like 3 years and a couple of weeks ago over one night, because so many people say, oh gosh, you were right for this 10 years or something. But it doesn't mean that we were preparing enough. And Ukraine as well. Actually, I was in Ukraine. I left Ukraine the last day before invasion, the big scale invasion on February 22nd. And I went there like 2 days before invasion, just to have this moral support after seeing this unfamous Putin speech, who many of Westerners, I think they forgot about it. But he basically declared like 3 days before the war, I think it was on Sunday, addressing to the nation, to Russia, that basically saying that there is no such thing as Ukraine. It's a historical mistake, and we will correct it. And that was very clear that something will happen. So I decided then to go to Kiev to show at least some moral support and to discuss things, what to do if things happen. And I remember back then very clearly that also President Zelenskyy was sending quite mixed signals. On one hand, calming down the nation, saying, "Okay, do not panic, and you US do not frighten our investors. On the other hand, please give us some more weapons." And actually, it was Lithuania and Estonia, basically the only countries which were giving weapons back then. It was mainly
Latvia did too. We gave some stingers.
Yeah, but Latvia too, maybe, but also stingers and javelins. So this was like the first thing. Who knows if not this donation, maybe some attack helicopters or some planes or some tanks will not be shot down, and maybe this could turn it to different story. I mean, I think this initial support, even before the big invasion was very important. But still, what I want to say about Zelenskyy in this case, when somebody is attacking him, saying that you have to negotiate and so on and so on and so on, and you have to be calmer and not to provoke. Basically, that is exactly the problem, that he was trying to do this up to the last day. Yeah. Because he was trying not to provoke, and even he didn't allow to maneuver for Ukrainian forces. And okay, that's like some rumors in India and so on and so on, who did what during the last day when the intelligence was there. But it looked like Zelenskyy didn't want to recruit new people, to train new people, to prepare better and so on. So because it was treated as a provocation. So he didn't provoke Russia, and that was exactly the wrong thing. But nowadays, of course, there are many layers speaking about Europe and European response. One layer we are speaking right now and past several days. Of course, we see some signs of Europeans being a little bit more mobilized. We see some signs of leadership, which is encouraging, at least some clear words, a little bit more clear plans. Not so much clarity about how they will be implemented, but still, I mean, it's something. Like we have some aims. Yep. And there's a probability that it will be implemented. On the other hand, of course, that's not all the picture, because having this geopolitical leadership, that's okay. Are we armed enough? Not really. Do we have some plans? Yeah, we have some, but also we have to talk about economic power, and that's also the very important part of the story. And when looking to the United States, it's very clear that all the geopolitical position and economic issues inside the country are also intertwined. And I think that the European Union, unfortunately, is still neglecting the problems of its own economy. And many nasty things may happen if you ignore it for so long. Economy, the mood, and atmosphere, and emotions of people. So I think we still have to catch up on so many things. Otherwise, some things may happen as in the United States when you treat some problems which are real, but not of the primary importance. but they are emotionally very catchy, and you may treat it as the most important problems. And suddenly, I know, I see now when Trump declares that there are only two genders now, and suddenly like millions of people are ready to forgive him everything and to give mandate to do anything. Okay, this to me it sounds a little bit weird because okay, I also think there are two genders, but I don't think that all people have to think this way. So that's,
Right.
I mean, we are losing sense of reality, sense of empathy in many cases, and I think if we ignore these emotional things, economic things, bad things may happen in Europe. But up to now, I'm quite optimistic that Europe is getting mobilized, at least for geopolitical position, and I hope that it will get mobilized for economic power as well. But this is more complicated, I must say.
Did you catch Macron's speech last night?
Yeah. Okay,
So
Macron is very good.
that's
Macron is very
a
good at
step.
speeches.
Yeah, true.
And Macron is very good at speeches. I mean, this is a very important part of leadership because okay, the word is your tool basically. You work with your tongue, with your expression of your face, and gesture of your hands as a politician because everything what is being done like by country which are you leading is actually not done not by you but by others, and others needs to be inspired and directed. So words are very important. So Macron is very good at speeches. The problem is that sometimes not everything is delivered, and that's a problem. Speaking about this nuclear capacities, of course, France has this capacity, which is very good. In a sense, it has maybe better capacity than UK because UK capacity is very much intertwined with US capacity, and I guess that nobody's sure if US will say that no, we don't want UK nuclear missiles to be used. I am not sure whether UK will be able to launch them on themselves. In French, everything is separated. It's just French is French, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's not so strong, maybe, but I guess that it is effective. It's much smaller than in Russia, but I guess that when you look how effective Russian nuclear power is, I have doubts that they are able to launch more than 10% of what they have. But again, that's of course speculation, and it's very speculation about very dangerous things. So we have to be careful, of course.
Well, I actually did want to ask you about the nuclear umbrella. I think it's just one to keep bringing up because you mentioned the beginning of the war. I have followed this pretty much, like a hawk, as I'm sure you have, since the first days, since all the Russian politicians, including Putin and the propagandists, and the American propagandists said that Putin was not going to invade, for months and weeks beforehand. Of course, nobody cares about any of these prognostications 3 years later. Of course, he did invade, but from the first weekend, where the 3-day military parade didn't work out, even though we know that a lot of the generals had their regalia and their uniforms to have a parade, literally 3 days after, the weekend after. 3 days.
And also they had this kind of riot police equipment being transported already to Ukraine because they expected some riots and some uprising, but not military resistance. So.
Yep. They had no understanding of what they were coming up against. But regardless, from that first weekend, Putin started the rattling the nuclear saber. Went on high alert was the word that he used. And then this continued on, even when they were forced to leave Kiev the month after, the end of March there, start of April. Same thing again and again. And this happened, every other month, as we know, for 3 years now. And I don't say that as something that could have been taken lightly, but obviously people like us. And I'm wondering how strong you think this still feels to Western leaders. But if we had taken proper action 3 years ago, like an international coalition of the willing, like George Bush Sr. did with Kuwait, if there was actually some real resistance not just the incredible brave Ukrainians, what they did, but outside forces. Does anyone really think that Moscow would have nuked, the world over Ukraine? We're not talking about marching on Moscow. We're talking about pushing Russians out of sovereign Ukraine. This is an issue that still to this day people don't have clarity on. And you bring up the nuclear word, and people go crazy about. Do you think that? Are we any closer to some sort of clarity there about actually using nuclear deterrence, or do you think it's just?
I mean, I don't think that we're close to clarity, but some new elements, I think, in this picture. Of course, I mean, one element is not new again, because the incursion into Kursk and still keeping like part of the Kursk Oblast actually is crossing the most important red line for Russia. I mean, it was not it was not much to Moscow, but it was like it's still in Russian Federation. So. And it's
which that was 2 years after, and Ukrainians did that to create a buffer zone. Great political and military move that they did.
Yeah,
but
I mean, military speaking, this is very clear that if you own on defense, you will always lose, because the maximum you may gain is not to be defeated, but actually you will be always attacked. You will, you will basically lose. In order to win the war, you have to also be on offensive, and I mean. Looking to communication, which has some grounded reality, I always like Estonian communication on this, especially head of military forces, when they say, okay, if Russians invade Estonia, I would more expect them not to come here to help us, but rather to attack Moscow or St. Petersburg on their bases in there. So actually, I mean, this is exactly what we need, because this is military thinking. Without this, you're going to lose all the time, because you are on defense. The defense line will broke someday. That's clear. If it will not broke, you will have bombs in your territory and so on and so on. So I think this military incursion into Kursk was basically the right thing. But speaking about nuclear threat, of course, it's a very dangerous and powerful physical tool, but it has psychological effects most of all. And of course, the threat is, perception of risk is even stronger than the actual risk in this case. And of course, up until Trump being elected, and up until he did what he did with his announcements and decisions, for me it was clear that Russia will never use nuke, because they know that they will get the response. And one more thing, that the moment they use nuke, it will not be efficient anymore for this propaganda and pressuring and psychological operations as a tool. From the moment they use it, but that's done. You may not use it as a psychological tool anymore, because it's already done. And what you get, you may get response. Nowadays, I'm not so sure about response. And this makes situation, I think, more dangerous. I think, okay, that's a little bit more dangerous. On the other hand, of course, for Russia, looking internally, I do not follow very much what's internal in Russia, but still, getting something. It is very clear that all this narrative is already for more than a decade, that Russia is actually trying to resist NATO and all these Western evil powers and so on and so on. And of course, it's not Ukraine was fighting against them, but all the NATO and so on and so on. And the United States, first of all, but when the United States steps back, it will be more difficult for Russia to justify using nuclear in Ukraine, because the United States stepped back. But they will be more willing, because they are not afraid of United States response. So I think, again, these two factors, contradictory factors, are very, very important in this. But at the end of the day, it's not nuke, it's not some particular tool or a weapon is winning the war, but you have to take everything into account and to look at it. But again, looking to the US, of course, US has good intelligence about Russia on all layers about it. And when I said that, I'm not so sure whether Russia is able to actually launch serious nuke, and of course, looking how much they have to prepare and who is pressing the button and so on and so on and so on. Of course, there's high probability that intelligence will notice that right on time. when United States say that, we'll not just share intelligence with Ukraine, but in general, we are kind of stepping back, do not look to Russia as a threat, I think it's a very bad thing for U.S. intelligence morale and for practical operations as well. And I think this may have a very serious consequences, because I'm quite sure that U.S. intelligence now is of much worse quality than it was several months ago, because of many reasons, whatever you may imagine in the area of intelligence.
Well, I mean, they've already started. I guess there was conflicting reports on that, but the cybersecurity, sort of cyber offensive was apparently scaled back. Although I guess it may have not been scaled back. It's hard to even know, obviously, with some of this stuff. But just one more thing, going back to the beginning, because I'm curious your thoughts. They did have great intelligence, and it was, for as clumsy as the Biden administration, obviously was. And this whole other political thing, obviously, is people in America that are on the right or center right, when they think about Ukraine, I think that they think about Biden. They think about scandals. They don't think about, the $100 million that Paul Manafort got, who was Trump's guy, from Yanukovych. They don't think about those stories. They just think about Burisma. They think about Biden. They think about, and of course, Trump thinks about Zelenskyy. Zelensky's refusal to investigate Burisma as grounds for Trump's impeachment. So there's a lot of political things there. But do you think there could have been anything more that the United States could have done to deter Russia? And I know I just say the United States. I do mean NATO. I want to get to NATO. But let's just say the United States and NATO. Do you think there's anything more that they could have done to deter the actual start of the war, other than just publicize, hey, they're going to do it? And of course, all these right-wing media commentators have egg on their face, but they're never going to admit. So anyway,
I think they could. And I don't know. Did you listen to Timothy Snyder's lectures about Ukraine?
Sure,
2 years ago, a year after the full-scale invasion. And exactly the first lecture. I mean, he's nailing right to the point, I think. And the question was he raises was why United States was so wrong about Ukraine, because basically Putin thought that Ukraine will fall in 3 days, and the United States thought that it will fall in 7 days or something like that. Basically, not a big difference. I mean, looking from today's perspective. But they thought, okay, they offered Zelenskyy a ride, as you know, with this famous thing. Yep. And Snyder asks why all this intelligence was so wrong, as in many cases, actually. And the answer is cultural. Because again, I fully buy this Zelenskyy argument that as a country or society, a socium basically bought Russian narrative that Ukraine is a little bit like Russia, somehow half Russia, or by incident not Russia, but in fact should be Russia, or something like this. I mean, all these narratives were circulating around all the time. And I think that, people from intelligence are also of this sort. And they also bought this argument because, naturally, if something is half something, of course, it's just a matter of time that it will become fully something. So if Ukraine is half Russia, I mean, someday it will be Russia because it's kind of natural. So I think that, unfortunately, Americans especially, but most Europeans as well, except Central and Eastern Europeans, we're thinking this way, which means that they didn't take Ukraine seriously. And when not taking Ukraine seriously, they didn't send the right message to Putin. Putin never expected that NATO will stand behind Ukraine and will actually support. I mean, it looked to him that these are crazy Baltics, basically, which do supply some weapons, crazy ones, because they will be the next ones and they will have less weapons, and the same things will be used against us. So this was the narrative which was bought by the West, by NATO, by US, and that's why on a very political level, on intelligence level, on all these open channels level with Russia, I mean, US was and NATO was not brave enough to say what to see things as they are, and actually to send messages as they are. And then, of course, what we saw also with the supply of weapons and so on and so on. I mean, always delayed, always not to the extent which is enough, always trying not to provoke, which is a stupid game in war. I mean, it's very clear. I mean, if you want to win, you have to be very decisive, and you have to have a response which is asymmetrical in many cases and which is stronger than the enemy expects. In this case, you win. Otherwise, you are stepping back, trying to keep it. It's defensive, and defensive is never to be won.
I want to get to current events here, but just one question there. Do you think that an actual, as real deterrence from a strong power that was backing this nation that was trying to defend itself, do you think that actual boots on the ground plus defensive weapons leading up to the war, that means NATO troops coming into Ukraine to deter, do you think that could have deterred? Do you think that could have been a solution?
Maybe. But again, this... People always speak about boots on the ground, but what we see that if Ukraine would have enough weapons, enough ammunition, enough everything, basically they're doing their job. I mean, there's no need now for boots on the ground from outside. Basically, there's a need for other things, and this is helping. And back then, this was exactly the same situation. But again, Ukraine had its own problems, because again, Ukraine was always trying not to provoke Russia, so that was another problem. So I think again, the time will come, but it will be explored in depth. I think. I still hope that happy ending will come some days, and some historians will look to these months and weeks right before this full-scale invasion, and will look who was doing what. And unfortunately, I think that they will find out that, unfortunately, Ukraine itself didn't mobilize enough. And again, speaking about deterrence, it's very clear that, if people know that it's deterrence, but not the actual readiness to fight back, so it never works if it's deterrence. But if it's actual readiness, that's the different thing. And for Finland is a very good example, because everybody knows that it will be hell for everyone if they try to enter Finland. And even being a small country, it's the best deterrence. Even before joining the NATO, it was very clear that this is not an easy target. And of course, being not an easy target in reality, but not in kind of propaganda deterrence, I think this is the most important thing. And this is the lesson what we learned, I think, here in Baltics, in Poland as well. Not doing everything, but quite a lot. In Poland, they're spending like hell for defense, but didn't yet introduce conscription. We did introduce conscription, but not to a sufficient level, I think, and we were maybe not spending enough. But again, there are good signals as well. I'm very happy that after German elections, I have no doubt that the German brigade will come to Lithuania as well, which is a very important thing. And of course, I think it's that in the interests of Germany as well, because again, if shit happens, so it's better to fight in the land which is not yours, but somewhere a little bit in a safe distance. So basically, if Western Europe wants to be safe, they have to send troops to our place, and this will be actual deterrence, which will be not just words, but actual thing, because people are trained to fight. If they are attacked, they will fight back, and that will be hell for Russians if they decide to do this.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, obviously, because you just talked about real deterrence and real, soldiers willing to fight for a common cause. Obviously, we're in the Baltics in this disastrous meeting at the White House that Zelenskyy had with Trump and Vance last week. The question was posed by a very interesting Polish journalist, actually. I asked some Polish friends if they'd seen him. They hadn't heard of him. Just interesting. He has some really pointed, he got multiple questions off to Trump. All good, in my opinion, as far as supporting a strong, valued alliance of free-loving countries and freedom-loving countries. And Trump, of course, he asked if these contingent of troops, and to remind listeners that maybe don't know, perhaps most know, we have Germans in Lithuania, we have Canadians in Latvia, we have Brits in Estonia. Americans are also there, in I guess, less numbers, but more in Poland. And so Trump said, the journalist asked, would he be committed to Poland if something more happens? And Trump said, I'm very committed to Poland. And then the journalist said, what about the Baltics? And then Trump hesitated. He equivocated. He did not give as strong of an answer. He said, they're also in a tough neighborhood. But eventually he said, I'm committed. I'm committed. And of course, we're in NATO. We all have the Article 5 clause. But everybody is now worried about Article 5 in itself. It's if it's a dead letter, if it's even alive. And there's a whole, I know we could go in 1,000 different directions with this, but I guess I just want to say, if the United States doesn't show the commitment to the Baltics that it showed to Poland, A, do you see that scenario? And B, how do you see the Baltics reacting?
I mean, all scenarios are possible, all scenarios. And I fully subscribe to this strategy that you have to be self-sufficient first, and you have to have like allies in order to be strong second. But there are like clear formula for winning battles. What do you have to have? You have to have will, skill, means, and friends. So speaking about all these factors, like will comes first, skill, means, and then friends. And of course, looking to the United States, it's obvious that it's not, unfortunately, a trustworthy partner right now. It's very clear and very, very unfortunate. I would like to hope that Europe, at least European NATO members, are trustworthy partners, starting with Poland, because of course that's the powers we have to rely on. And the powers you mentioned, of course, also in the Baltics, Germans, Canadians, and Brits. We have to rely on them and on ourselves. But the question has this context: are we sufficient to defend ourselves without the United States? And I think yes. Donald Tusk named it very elegantly. Like never one before said it. It's a strange situation. Why 500 million Europeans are asking 300 million Americans to defend us against 140 million Russians? Okay, that's very simplistic, but that is basically the truth.
It is.
And of course, having in mind that Ukraine already did most of the job. Basically, it stopped Russia. Again, I think Snyder is right when saying that the only thing that stops the World War III is Ukraine fighting Russia back. Because World War II started because Czechoslovakia failed. Failed. And all the weapons were used against Poland with the beginning of World War II. And Ukraine saved us from this Munich and Czechoslovakia moment. And it saves the world from World War III. Because if Ukraine would have fallen, of course, what you could have, it's exactly when this kind of people where many people would adapt, all the equipment, all the weapons will be in the hands of Putin. So Putin basically would have had bigger army, better equipped army, and now it has much smaller army and basically destroyed army. Of course, now we talk about military complex, how it works, and so on and so on and so on. But okay, Europe also will produce something and is producing on a little bit bigger numbers, but it's producing more. So basically, we are in safer situation now. Okay, that's a very weird thing to say, but basically, I think we are in safer situation now in Europe and in Baltics than 4 years ago, because 4 years ago we are calmly asleep and thought that nothing will happen. And now we see that something is happening, what was about to happen in any way, and our neighbor is defending us, actually. So, of course, we are much safer, and we are preparing if something and helping our neighbor. Basically, this is much better situation. Of course, that's for very big sacrifice of Ukrainian soldiers and civilian lives, but still, the alternative scenario is awful. It's even more dangerous. Well, could you imagine Ukraine falling immediately in 3 days? Scenario afterwards. We will not be talking here now, I guess. That would be
the debt that the Baltics in particular have to Ukrainians, I think, is uncalculable. It's incredible what they have done.
Yeah. And also for Putin, it's very clear that, I quite recently, several months ago, I heard Kwasniewski, a former Polish president, speaking in some event in Lithuania. And he said that, during one call with Putin, Putin was referring that, we both know that it's a conflict or a situation when two empires are like facing each other. And Kwasniewski says, what do you mean, what empires? And the answer was like, of course, Russian Empire and Rzeczpospolita, like Polish-Lithuanian Empire. Okay, he thinks that these terms. And of course for him, today's NATO, back then it's like Rzeczpospolita. Okay, for us Lithuanians, I'm a big fan of history. We had this history of like 200 years of fighting Russia and resisting Russia. We were trying to save Pskov and Novgorod from Moscovites. We were like, Smolensk was a big fortress of Lithuania, Polish Commonwealth. Of course, all Belarus was fighting Moscovians all the time for 200 years, 6 or 7 wars. Some got better for us, some worse. At one moment they took over Vilnius. At some moment we took over Moscow. Okay, that was tough. But for us, it's history, and looks like for Putin, it's reality, and he acts according to this reality today. And again, we may pretend that we're not doing this. Okay, I do understand that we don't have to stick with our historical narratives and to live in history. We have to live now. But still, if we pretend that other people are not thinking this way, it will not lead anywhere, because this is our idea about other people, but not what actually other people are. And Russia has this narrative of expanding Russia, and empires are designed to grow because otherwise they're collapsing, and so on and so on. So Russia is exactly in this phase. So okay, but anyway, this long leg to side leg.
No, it's worth saying because it's clear that Russia was the only empire that didn't, to use the word empire, didn't fully fall after World War II and go into freedom, right? We had obviously the Soviet Union, Baltics were illegally occupied into that, but they still use this word empire like it means something, where the rest of the free world doesn't not use that and actually thinks that they're moving on and, likes to trade and go on vacation and all these things. And so we have this new reality in the very current situation with the Trump administration. I don't want to look too much into it or speculate too much, but it seems to be that, from when you started, when Mr. Trump started to say, Zelenskyy is a dictator, Zelenskyy has 4% approval, Zelenskyy should hold elections. There's only one person that could have given him that information, and it is Vladimir Putin. I'm almost 100% sure, other people have said this as well, that those words, specifically the 4% number, but the dictator as well, it's clear that there is Russian propaganda now in the White House. And whether you want to say it's witting or unwitting, that's a whole different discussion from the Trump side. You can go back to his visits to Moscow in the 80s or whatnot. But we do have Russia, the Zelenskyy meeting, the TASS, the Russian state news agency, there was a reporter that was allowed in and then supposedly found and kicked out. How was he allowed in? Who got him in the first place? They're not even allowing the Associated Press in the White House.
Or Reuters.
Right. So this is beyond serious from obviously a Central or Eastern European looking at the situation. It's hard to sit here in Central or Eastern Europe and not see that the White House is, if not stepping back, but actually perhaps even turning hostile towards Central and Eastern Europe. How do you view this?
I don't think that it's turning hostile. Basically, it's clear that what we see. Maybe you follow more the discourse in the United States, but I follow a bit, and it looks like very obviously that they simply don't care. They simply don't care. And I think that this goes through different layers. I mean, they don't care about the global economics. They try to care about themselves, and this is going to have disastrous consequences for United States themselves, not just for the globe. They don't care about security, global security, just about their security. They don't. I mean, they don't have empathy. So that's the worst thing, I think. Because okay, even if you don't care, I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to like be a psychological bully. You don't have to make jokes of those who are victims to be attacked. I mean, and this is exactly what I'm frustrated also about this like libertarians circles are playing this, and it's very unfortunate that this all this like MAGA and all these like trends. I can't follow what's happening in there, but it's complete new things. And part of this is like this technocratic libertarian approach, which basically is wrong in most cases because again, you say that I don't want my money to be spent by you for the defense of Ukraine. I don't want my children to be sent to wars to defend Ukraine. Okay, that's true. I mean, I mean, you can think this way, but the problem is because I mean, those people tend to present themselves as a very rational, very theoretical thinking and very analytical thinking. But in fact, the step which illustrates that their thinking is completely emotional is that they not just say about this, I don't want money to be spent this way and this one, but they also play jokes about Zelenskyy being a beggar or whatever, which means that it's all emotional. They simply don't like it. They like other things. And again, on theoretical level, I think that the problem is, okay, all this kind of libertarian argument. I mean, I stopped calling myself libertarian. Even my worldview didn't change. I believe the same things because of these morons, basically. And I never heard anyone complaining that if police is detaining a kind of thief or some attacker, burglar in front of your eyes. I mean, I never heard anyone complaining that this is my money as a taxpayer. I don't want my taxpayer to be spent on like keeping order in my city or in my country or in my neighborhood or in somewhere. So where is that somewhere? And for people just, I mean, are completely unrealistic. So okay, I switched to this like a libertarian.
No, it's good actually.
Both of us are libertarians in one sense, but okay. So after I don't know, maybe it was after this big scale invasion, or even before, after Crimea, after 2014. I think I changed my Twitter self-description from libertarian to something else because okay, that's weird. I mean, so many people whom I still respect, I must say, they are so lost when speaking about moral values and about empathy and about realistic assessment of the situation and about how to use theoretical models in practice. I never had anybody apologizing that they called Crimean annexation a manifestation of secession. Because there were a lot of people who said, okay, these people have a right to secession. What's secession? I mean, all the evidence that it's not secession is taking over. But never heard anybody apologizing that, okay, I was misled. I mean, you may make mistakes. That happens. I mean, theoretically, if you're not interested in Crimea, you may think that these the kind of green people are kind of local uprisers and it's secession.
Yeah.
I mean, I also know very few things about very distant countries in South America or in Africa and so on. For me, it's very difficult to judge who is who. But when you get the knowledge, you should apologize if you are commenting this way. And nobody's doing this. So basically, what I'm saying, that's okay. I'm again doing a leg in answer to your question, but I think this is a very big moral problem first of all. And without a moral position, it's impossible to have a strong position in any other layer, legal, military, economic. I think that's a real problem for the Western world.
No, I completely agree. And I actually did want to pull this thread a little bit more because for me, it was precisely because of Crimea that changed my views. Let's say, I mean, almost exactly like you said, not really calling myself a libertarian just because of the word seems to have such a emotive context to really just centrists that actually are good people. And the centrists that are good people really just want the best for their families, the best for their nation, so on and so forth. But there still are some arguments I would like to ask you, or maybe how you handle it, because like you said, obviously it's beyond reproach to say these things about Zelenskyy. Tucker Carlson calls Zelenskyy, sweaty and rat-like. Like, this is absolutely anti-Semitic words, on top of just being not helpful towards the leader of a country that's being invaded. Like, pretty sure he wouldn't say that about Churchill. But, well, maybe he would, though, because he likes to side with this crazy Daryl Cooper and these guys now who say that Churchill was the baddie. Churchill was the bad guy in World War II. But anyway, that's a whole other discussion as well. Simply about the money, I think it's important or interesting to talk about. Do you have any arguments? I have some. But when we're talking about, yes, boots on the ground are not being requested from the Ukrainians, simply support, military support, monetary support, as a freedom-loving person from a developed Western country, regardless of any other crazy stories about the Biden administration or COVID or whatever any sort of libertarian, hard right conspiracist wants to drum up. I have some arguments on why money and weapons are much better than not providing them, and much better cost-wise long-term than not providing them. But I'm wondering if you have just any more, because you mentioned it, and you mentioned that they just don't want to help them, and I think that's true. But that, they would say that no, we don't want to spend our tax dollars on Ukraine. Are there any other, besides the moral clarity, which I think that they don't have? Are there any other sort of
I think
reasons?
The flawed reasoning in these libertarian circles is that if you treat taxation as like okay, taxation is like by force. You're taking out your money by force. I mean, taxation is theft basically, and okay, you can't argue with this. This is a theft. Again, I can fully agree with the argument that you should have like less taxes is better. Of course. I mean, then you get back to the argument to the other side. I mean, do you want a government to do something? Then if you agree that the government has to do something, okay, that means that you agree with some theft. Then the question is how much and for what purpose. And this how much it has two sides, how much to take and to deliver, and for what has many possibilities, and then you just have to decide. Again, what's frustrating for me is when libertarians are suddenly turning into welfare economists and saying, Starmer made our elderly homes cold and didn't spend enough on some kind of payments, and now giving away money to Ukraine. Okay, which means that suddenly are for welfare states, but not for defense, which is a core function of the government. And to me, it's completely crazy. And again, clearly for me, it's I mean, the money and support for Ukraine, it has two elements. One, at least two elements. One element is moral. I mean, somebody is in a bad position, is in trouble. Maybe it's our moral obligation to help them. For me, I think it's quite enough in some cases. I mean, it has nothing to do with your interest. It's just your moral position that, okay, I want to help my taxpayers' money to be used not just for my interest, but also for interest of those who are like in the bigger need. The other justification is that, of course, it's defense money. And again, when speaking about defense, I mean, why England felt under Romans when Romans occupied England? Because they were not united, and they were taking fortress by fortress with a much smaller army, and that was it. And I mean, of course, if you want to defend yourself, you don't wait until the army comes to your home, to your backyard. Of course, you want bigger force to meet the army, not in front of your home, but somewhere more distant. And again, if it works for the city and for your home, of course it works for your country. I mean, it's better not to wait until the enemy comes to your country. It's better to confront the enemy, maybe in enemy's country. And again, I also like this kind of, this is military, but this is like common sense rule of thumb. Also, the head of Estonian military forces, they said, what will happen if this and this and this and this, if Russians would gather, like start to consolidate by Estonian border and would definitely try to attack and so on and so on. He said, of course, from military perspective, the sole good like position would be like preemptive strike to this like condensed army. Do we have enough people like thinking this way? Unfortunately, not. If not, that's position of weak. We will suffer because of that. We have to have this thinking. And when you asked previously about this Article 5, I think the problem is that, okay, it was tested once by Americans, as it now like widely discussed and about after 9/11. And again, it was some debate, but not very big debate. Do we have to switch it on or not? Because it was a matter of trust. I mean, basically, the United States asked, so basically, they treated that this is attack on the United States, so we have to help. Nowadays, all these discussions about hybrid attacks, cyber attacks, all this kind of soft, quasi-soft, and all these attacks, it actually will be attack on your country, and it's not clear. And I would think that it's already happening. The war is already happening, and Russia is attacking NATO countries. It's very clear that Russia is. I mean, it is public. It's switching from psychological operations to kinetic operations in Central Europe, and we have like very clear incidents. These DHL incidents when they were trying to play this Mossad games, but not so successfully, thanks God, and then they were detained and so on. So this one was very kinetic attack. Another one was again. I mean, at least several attempts, at least in Poland and Lithuania, they tried to put on fire in big supermarkets. They've chosen the worst target in Vilnius, which is IKEA, which is basically maybe has one of the best fire protection systems and everything. Yeah. Okay, this was another wake-up call that we have to think from different angles. But basically, it's clear that it's a kinetic operation of Russian Federation inside NATO countries. So basically, Article 5 has to be already activated. And in a way, it is already activated to some extent, because when Bundestag is voting for sending the brigades to Lithuania, I mean, basically, we get what we want. We get our NATO allies support. But again, I think this is very, 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 very important to understand what is the Article 5 and how to interpret that. Me as a lawyer, as I do my consultancy thing, that I always say that, basically, okay, nobody hears what is written in something. What actually matters is actions. And actions are determined by culture, by strategy, and only then by this kind of exact wording. Because culture and strategy determines more how you act than laws. And this is exactly about Article 5. Article 5 is important, but our mindset, our determination, our culture, our strategy is more important than exact wording of it.
Yeah, totally agree. I think those are great words. I like to use the example of, specifically regarding Ukraine and assistance, I like to use the example of the French helping the Continental Army in America. I think even a lot of Americans think that the revolution was, a bunch of corn-fed patriots that were getting up every morning and just pushing the British out, when in reality it was about 5 years of assistance from the French, 2 covert and then 3 years official. And then they at the Battle of Yorktown, which is one of the most famous battles, that really the most decisive battle, there were more French ships, soldiers, ammunition, and casualties than American. And again, I don't say that to say that I want American soldiers to come over and help, but if you just stop for a second and think that there's actually nothing more American than having your friends help you in your fight for independence. And I think that's the hard thing, is that a lot of even Western Europeans and certainly a lot of Americans right now in this environment just want the war to stop. They want peace at any cost. And they don't think that they need to help or should help Ukraine fight this war. So, at least under the current administration, this whole ethos that we tried, it's become, like I said at the beginning of the show, it's become just about, Biden. It's Biden's war. This is what Trump says 1,000 times. That's very difficult for Ukraine. And I think they're going to be super angry about it. I mean, I don't say that as a threat to anybody. The poor Ukrainians, I just can't imagine their psychological group, as a group, their psyche, and then how they're going to feel about all of this if it does not come out well. I mean, they're the sixth largest army in the world right now. Russia's the second. If the second largest army in the world incorporates the sixth, that's not going to be good for anybody. But psychologically, for the Ukrainians to be given up on again, for hundreds of years, like you said, this was a battle.
I think, in this case, again, I'll get back to this kind of intangible about moral support. And the words are very, very important. And to come back to what we had in Baltic states and in Western Ukraine after World War II, when we had this guerrilla resistance for like 10 years, basically, opposing and resisting Russians in like tens and hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, I have relatives who died in this battle and battles and so on. So basically, also it was a little bit fueled by the United States, by the voice of America saying that, please keep fighting, we are coming to rescue us. So basically, it was kind of promises saying that we are going to help you. Americans didn't come, didn't assist, and it was disillusioned back then. And it was, of course, it's psychological trauma, of course, because people still of this like elder age, they think, okay, Americans promised then and they didn't come and so on. But on the other hand, it's difficult to say. I wouldn't say that these people are blaming the United States, because they do understand that the situation was not simple. And okay, maybe it was not possible to come, and maybe this and this and this, but they felt this moral support, and not just moral support, but also some other like practical support to this guerrilla fighting again. And it's all about moral cause. So when going back to Ukraine, I think that for United States to in order to save the face, basically, again, first thing is to start behaving with empathy as a friend. And then what we expect from friends is when we are in trouble, is to help as much as they can. You cannot blame your friend that he or she is not helping enough if they have like internal problems or whatever. I would take this kind of very, 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 very simple like example, maybe nasty, but maybe not. If you are in financial trouble and you have you want some help from your friends, and you have a good friend who promised to help all the time, but then he says, no, my spouse is kind of very strongly against it now, and I cannot do this, and you know that this is true. Okay, basically you will have to understand it because this may happen. But if your friend will say, go to hell, you're not interesting to me, and what a joke you are. So that would be a completely different situation. So I think for the United States, it's not for me to teach what the United States should do, but again, that's the lesson what we as in the Baltics or Ukrainians, I have no doubt, would accept as a normal position. Of course, you always need more help than you are ready to supply. But again, the intention is very, very important. Intention is extremely important, and I think people very often underestimate it.
Do you think that this next few weeks, obviously we're at a crucial point these next few weeks, do you have any thoughts about how the latest discussions are going to shake out? Obviously, we had the Ukrainians in Belgium today. We have Macron's speech last night. We have European resolve. I imagine it might not be too late for Europe and hopefully the Baltics, but I question still not the Ukrainian people's resolve, but just the Western resolve for Ukraine. I hope that it's not too late for the West to help Ukraine. How do you feel about it?
I think it's not too late. And again, I mean, all this thing when the U.S. Military support is being stopped, hopefully not temporary, but again, when it's stopped, of course, Europe still has resources to help. I mean, both directly right now and in the medium term, and Danes are providing a very good example when they are providing basically money to produce ammunition and everything in Ukraine and so on and so on. So basically, money may help, and then the support is very important, and then Europe is able to do this, and all these announcements, like recent announcements, they provide some hope for this. Actually, when looking to these coming weeks, okay, all weeks are decisive in the war. I mean, and all coming weeks are always the most important.
Yeah,
after this week we'll have
true.
like more next the most important weeks. And so I'm a bit cynical about this because it was always the case. When you roll back, coming next weeks, a month were always the most important, and that was true actually, and it is true. But what I'm a little bit worried about is also about if we will come to this fake peace, which is basically like ceasefire. And I mean, in this case, I mean, we will roll back to this a little bit more dangerous situation when we will pretend that there is no war, which means that Russia will re-equip itself, will mobilize itself, will prepare for the next attempt. And quite many people in Europe will say, "Whew, thanks God it's over. Let's go back to normal." Okay, I don't think that everybody will do this. I think for Baltics, for Poland, for Czech Republic, for Romania, for others, okay, we know what that's all about. So we'll we'll try to keep ourselves strong. But then it will be very dangerous. And again, for Russia, as President of Finland also said, we expect that if this peace would be made, this will be a little bit more dangerous situation in our region, also for Finland, because Russia will have more resources to do all this sabotage and other kinetic operations in our countries. Because they lack resources, they lack equipment, they lack all their minds are targeted to Ukraine. We are out of focus now, and suddenly we will get a little bit more to the focus. So basically, for us, if this kind of quasi-peace, fake peace will be made, or real peace will be made, that will be another stage of very dangerous situation. We would have to be very careful about how to protect ourselves. And unfortunately, I think we have to be very prepared. I mean, it doesn't mean that we are not able to make ourselves safe, but we just have to take care of it. I mean, it's better to have a gun in your home, to be prepared, and to know how to deal in difficult situations, and for all these institutions to be prepared to help people, and so on and so on. Or suddenly, this kind of fire protection rules are becoming more important. Again, that's when I'm looking from this perspective. Again, when I'm helping, okay, that's what I do. We all want business to have less burden from different institutions, okay, fire protection, whatever. I mean, they require all these stupid things. All this is burden, and of course, sometimes it's very stupid things. On the other hand, we want to be safe, so we want to be very efficient in this. So again, this switch to efficiency, effectiveness of like all these like protective measures, I think we have to be more careful about it. So the risk is definitely higher. It doesn't mean that, I mean, these measures don't have to be lean. Of course, they have to be lean and they have to be focused, because we have to do less things which are completely irrelevant and have no effect. And unfortunately, we do many of these things. And we have to be focused on the things that actually do work. But yes, that's the situation which is coming, not just kind of helping Ukraine now, but also if the peace is made, how to live then. And I think, again, like in chess, we have to think like 2 or 3 steps in advance. So this is our in advance now.
Yeah. And do you think, I know this is a difficult question, I kind of asked it earlier, but maybe I ask it a different way. If it appears that Russia and the US will go above Ukraine and above Europe even to try to continue to push this peace, whatever peace it is. And by the way, I will remind our listeners that I don't think Russian media has used the word peace yet. Russia's not showing any signs of stopping to kill Ukrainians every night, and a couple hundred shy drones usually every night. But anyway, if they come to a deal, as Trump likes to say, do you think that Europe is strong enough to come with a second deal? I mean, like Macron is basically alluding to. Do you think that? I know this is a difficult question to ask. There's a lot of balls in the air at the moment, but
okay, but basically, I think of course it's a very complicated question. European Union as such is not able to do this. It's very clear, but I think it's a very practical way of talking about this. It's about coalition of the willing,
right.
And if France, Germany, UK, and probably Italy and Spain is in. So of course, Central European and Northern European countries are in, which is quite a strong alliance, basically. So I think this coalition of the willing is a big thing. So it could be in the framework, more or less in the framework of European Union, in the framework of NATO, more of like NATO, I guess, because in the European Union we have some kind of strange countries, not just Ireland, which feels that all the disasters will bypass them. I think it's a very, very dangerous situation for them, but because they may get surprised very much one day, very much.
Yeah.
But yes, this coalition of the willing, I think it's the right answer, and I was very glad to see this last Saturday from London that this was made. Of course, it was a mistake not to invite Baltic states to this parade. On one hand,
why do
it's not a big problem, but on
sorry to interrupt. I just
on.
wanted to ask really quickly. Do you think it was a general oversight, or do you think that they actually didn't invite because they know the Baltics are too hawkish?
No. I think not because too hawkish. I mean, it's genuine. I mean, oversight, and of course, it was not problematic. Of course, part of the thing was we know that the Baltic states will support, and I think it was being arranged like in one day. And of course, all these like things. I mean, I do completely buy this argument that UK is was not organizing such a high level heads of state events for so long, and it takes some capacity. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, some people in the administration, some secretary has to call somebody and to send the letter and something. I mean, it's so human and so simple, but it still works. I mean, we tend to forget about these simple things, so that these also do matter. And maybe they did invite at the very, very last moment, but then it was too late to organize. And then, okay, I fully imagine how it could happen.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Do you have a couple minutes, Remigijus? I know we're running a little bit over.
Yeah. That's okay. That's okay. I have.
Just a couple more. Maybe bringing it back still to our classical liberal ideas, and I think history is very important to understand. You actually wrote, I remember, 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, in 2014, a Facebook post about trying to get libertarians on Facebook behind having respect for Eastern Europe and having respect for Ukrainians and sovereignty and so on and so forth. And there were a lot of people, I don't even have to name names, you can if you want, but there's a lot of people in this very hardcore libertarian, anarcho-capitalist type people that I know that
there are some books of them.
Sure. I mean, from back then to 2014 up until today, even we have seen that the support there has been really lacking or not existing at all. And I have myself noticed, again, back to the Kremlin talking points, they're just there. And one quick thing to point out here, which I think a lot of Westerners might still not understand, is I've been saying it for 10 years to some libertarian friends, but again, I don't have a huge megaphone. But, for 10 years, if you were kind of a young anarcho-capitalist, libertarian, whatever, trying to find out different ideas, one of the best places on YouTube to see these people interviewed was RT online, RT on YouTube, Russia Today, RT. And to me, it was completely clear. It was by design. I actually remember being at an event with Tom Woods and Bob Murphy a couple years, like 2018, 2019, trying to explain this to them. 2018, I believe it was, trying to explain the danger of what was happening. And they just have no idea. No, they're not even thinking about Russia, anything. It's just, to them, if you speak to them, they're far away from the conflict. You know, even Ron Paul was going on RT. And they would just...
First of all, Ron Paul, first of all.
Yeah. Well, their response is, we're just trying to get our ideas out there. If this organization wants to listen to us, that's just what we're going to do. That's their general view. But they don't ask the next question, basically, is, you know, who are they paying? Who are they in touch with? You saw this Tenet Media blow up that happened in the United States where, you know, Russia was paying these moderate YouTubers like $100,000 per episode. It was unbelievable. And they're just, you know, denigrating Ukraine, Tim Pool and these people. It's so clear for people like us that really, you know, Russian propaganda could just, like a duck's back in rain, you know, the water just washes off of us. We're so clear-eyed about it. But they really don't understand that it's not really for Russia about they want you to love Russia or to hate Russia. They just want you to hate yourselves in the West. Because if you come to Russia, you know, 20% of the people don't have toilets. They never talk about Russia. They would never want you to know how bad Russia is. 30-year dictator.
It's not about Russia. It was not about Russia today. It was about America.
Exactly.
Today.
That's why they had to switch it to RT eventually. But they still, I think that disconnect, and obviously we see this exploded now with the Tucker Carlson types. We see it on Twitter, Elon Musk, so on and so forth. The propaganda is gigantic. It's so beyond the pale in my view. So long-winded question there. Have you made any responses more to these people? Do you have anything to say to them, or are you just sort of, have you moved on and you're just addressing the people that you need to address when it comes to...
I mean, there are books of
supporting
like many of those people in my bookshelf. This one and another ones as well. I do treat them, many of them, as good theoreticians. I mean, just looking even to those people who are dead now and do not have possibility to have position on Ukraine, like Murray Rothbard, for example. He was always attacking United States as a symbol of state, you know, as a phenomenon of state, and he was not kind of anti-Soviet so much. It doesn't mean that he was pro-Soviet, because I know, for example, because when I went to Mises Institute into Alabama, I looked to Rothbard's library, and of course, my eye stopped at the book History of Lithuania from Rothbard's bibliothèque and then the library, and I took this book out, and I saw that, you know, he read some like 50 or something pages, and he marked some places and so on, and I know what he was talking about, independence movement and so on. So he was also positive about it. He was basically about against the state, doesn't care about against which state, and of course, as United States is the closest state, so I'm first of all against United States, not against Soviet Union or others. So I think partly this is theoretical debate and the theoretical problem that quite many of these people don't care. They live a little bit in a theoretical world, and all these practicalities, okay, this is kind of things, this is not so important and so on. And I think it's a lack of sense, and they're a little bit detached from reality. They do not care. Basically, they don't even understand that they're basically taking the role of like useful idiots in some cases, but they don't care. It doesn't mean that they're bad theoreticians, but they don't care how to apply it. You know, so that's a problem. The other problem is, of course, is when they're being flattered by this. By these interviews and so on, you are commenting on your American issues and so on and so on. Of course, you tend to lean into this direction, and it's not a surprise that exactly those people who were interviewed by RT back then they were the ones who were like then saying, "Oh yes, we have a good example of this, like right of secession in Crimea." I mean, they bought this so easy because they were so close. I mean, it's all our human brain. We tend to trust those people to whom we communicate, and they were communicating with Russians, and they trusted them. That's as simple as that. Now I do keep communication with quite some of them. I do not try to persuade those people who are completely against. I just recently posted a small comment after some Sean Gabb's from UK poster about how crazy and immoral Zelenskyy is and so on. So basically, this is a shame. But again, I don't want to get into discussion with them. I mean, there's still quite a big group of people who are in this kind of gray zone. They basically don't care. They don't blame the victim, but they don't support the victim either. So quite a big group of such people in the West, in Western Europe or United States. But thanks God we have these libertarians, classical liberals, free marketeers who are also supportive, not even of Ukraine, but if you remember like Mises, like the slogan, I mean, you have to fight the evil all the time, persistently.
Move ever more boldly against evil.
And forgetting this, that I mean, at least respecting those who fight the evil. This is very, very bad, and making again this one mistake is quite theoretical of this like analytical philosophy. I think when you decide the state is the state, all the states are the same, and basically, as we discussed before, with Hans Hermann Hoppe, whom I admire so much as theoretician, he says, is it either Putin gang or Zelenskyy gang or like whatever gang? I mean, yes, maybe they are gangs, but they are a little bit different. It's like this person or another person or third person. Okay, if you are like physician and you treat, leg of people, you look to human like bodies and minds from one perspective. But if you are acting person in society, of course, you do understand that humans are the same, but not the same. So I think that quite many libertarians do forget that, yes, states are the same, but not the same. And when treating everything the same, they are very much misled. And I think that's, unfortunately, is a problem of partly of libertarian philosophy as well. That's so unfortunate that even those people who know this, they still make this mistake sometimes. It's very annoying.
It's going to come back to the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, Remigijus, actually. That's what's... they're going to see the true freedom there. We can end it there, but I have lots. I need to write some more down on this, but I still, it boggles the mind that Hans Hermann Hoppe's treatise, Democracy, the God That Failed. To me, he spends. Yes, I know that he's not favoring monarchies, but he's saying monarchies can be better than democracies for those that haven't read it, because of incentives and rent seeking, so on and so forth.
From economic analysis was verified. Very nice.
But there's still this bent there that those monarchies, he says it at the beginning of the book, those monarchies were an older, better way. And then when Washington came in, when Woodrow Wilson came in after World War II, that was like a new era. And in my opinion, it's completely missing the fact that there were other actual liberal elected monarchies in Europe 100 years before that, who were brought down by those same monarchies. So there's no mention of Poland. There's no mention of, it's all about 1914. There's no mention of 1795. There's no mention of any of the wars in the 18th or 19th centuries.
Okay, Matt, maybe I love history too much, but again, for one of these final sentences, when Lithuanians tried to organize uprisals against Russian Empire in 19th century, we had like three of them. So in 1831, they published a kind of like catechism of a Lithuanian, which like self-description. I mean, if you are Lithuanian, you have to follow these rules, basically. That's kind of like propaganda thing, And the most important sentence is, who is Lithuanian? And the answer is that Lithuanian is the one who loves freedom and obeys the statutes. Gosh, it's 1831. What better we can invent now? Who is like European or Latvian or Lithuanian or Polish? The one who loves freedom and obeys the rule of law or constitution or whatever. That's so strong and then such a good thing, and it's like an American spirit as it should be, and as we still see it. I wish we would not spoil this image of American spirit because we need this.
That's a great. I think that's a good way to end it, Remigijus. There's a lot of wonderful things out of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Wonderful free market, freedom, classical liberal things, values, and there's only one empire that's still around. That was one of those empires that brought them down, and we know which one that is. So, yeah, I think it's it's gonna be a battle. I don't know. Any other closing thoughts here? Any places to donate or things you're doing for Ukraine?
No, it's okay. Well, 1 hour and a bit already, so that's enough, I think.
All right. Well, listen. You have a website, right? Šimašius. Difficult name for non-Lithuanians, but
Simasius.com.
Šimašius.com, and we'll put this out as a podcast as well. And Remigijus, I appreciate your time today. Thanks a lot for chatting.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye bye.
Slava Ukraine. All right. Take care.
Slava.